Hey everyone, don't know who's out there, but we're going to start our first live question and answer session here from Present Tense Fitness. Just by way of introduction, I'm Jason Harrison, co-owner of Present Tense Fitness. I work alongside the other co-owner, Susan Harrison, who's a certified personal trainer through the NSCA, and Anna Shearer, who is our yoga teacher. She also teaches at a local, very well-regarded studio called Speakeasy. They just actually expanded to another location here in Dayton, which is good news for the city. So the purpose of today's Q&A is to just go over some basics in terms of how we approach training beginners, because that's a lot of our business is people who've never touched a barbell or a kettlebell or a dumbbell before, and so we approach those clients, I realize, in a pretty specific kind of way. So for many years, we've read and heard that that certifications don't really matter with personal trainers, and I think I believe that for a very long time. But I've come to realize that the very first certification I got as a personal trainer, that sort of led me down a road that's had a big impact on the way I approach training clients today. And that's not to say that my certification is better or worse. There's a lot of good ones out there. And it's also not to say that our approach is better or worse than anybody's. It's just, I just wanted to do a Q&A about how we approach training beginners, because there's a specificity to it. So my certifications have always been primarily through the National Strength and Conditioning Association, the NSCA. And one of those certifications I have now is a CSCS, which is a Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. So why does that matter? The NSCA the CSCS in particular, is the certification that you'll find for teams. So team sport strength and conditioning coaches. So if you go to like Ohio State's strength staff homepage, you'll see a lot of CSCS, and that's sort of, that spirit is how I've always gone about training. So the reason that matters is there's a lot of different approaches to training, and so the one thing I always try to be clear about is that I'm not dogmatic about the particular approach that one has. And so, power lifters may train a certain way, weightlifters will train a certain way, CrossFitters will train a certain way. But the way we tend to approach things at Present Tense is that of a strength and conditioning coach. And for many of our clients, their sport isn't, football or basketball or tennis or anything like that. Their sport is just life, like getting through the day-to-day and juggling family and kids and job and all that kind of thing. So what we tend to do is we tend to think of our clients as athletes. So you think about the job of a strength and conditioning coach. You have a star running back. Your job is to keep that running back performing at a very high level. And the other important part of your job is to keep that running back on the field. Because if the running back is getting hurt in training or in practice and they're not playing on Saturday or Sunday, then that's a real problem for the strength and conditioning coaching staff. So the reason that's important is if you want to think about the difference between, say, the way a power lifter might approach training and the way a strength and conditioning coach might approach training. Powerlifting is you get on the platform and your job is to pull as much weight from the floor as possible, even at the risk of injury. I was listening to a podcast the other day that Juggernaut Training Systems put out, which is, if you're interested in strength sports, there's no better place to go than Juggernaut. And they were talking to a chiropractor who himself is a power lifter. And he said, look, my approach with clients and my approach when I'm on the platform are two different things. Clients he's trying to keep healthy, but when he's competing, it's kind of like, let's get that weight moving at all costs. And so that makes some sense for a powerlifter, especially if you want to win. But for the lawyer or the teacher or the 9-to-5 factory worker, if they get hurt deadlifting, then we've really screwed them, because they can't, if they can't move, they can't work. And so our primary motivation here is to simultaneously make people stronger and perform better, but keeping the idea that we must keep them healthy in the forefront of our mind. So you're really trying to thread the needle between pushing somebody, because if you don't push yourself in the gym, then you're not going to get stronger, you're not going to get leaner, but you have to keep in mind that you want to also stay healthy. So that's sort of what I think is a strength and conditioning coach approach to training beginners. So when people walk in the door with us, and this is true, if you're working out on your own, or you go to a gym or you have a home gym, the first thing I advise people, if they've been on the sidelines of fitness but they want to do a home gym, or they want to go to a gym and work out, is to prioritize getting strong at first. And I think sometimes people try to skip steps. So they think, well, I'm a recreational tennis player or golfer. Like, what specific things can I do to be a better golf player? But if you're not currently doing any sort of strength training, it just makes sense to get generally stronger first. So just getting stronger will help your golf game or your tennis game, or dance if you're a dancer. Just get stronger, and then once you're stronger and you have men of strength and fitness, then you can start worrying more about specificity. But for virtually every sort of athlete, the movements will be the same: squatting, hinging, lunging, pushing, and pulling. And the variation comes from the variation from person to person. So, the later somebody waits to start their fitness journey, the more likely it is that there may be some of those movements that may be off the table, particularly with squatting. It's really hard, if somebody has never done strength training before or never done these movements before, for a 50-year-old to walk into the gym and be able to do what we would call like a full range of motion squat. So we may have to play around a little bit with their particular exercises, but the goal is the same for everyone. Get them to be able to squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, or step up. All right, so what about, what's your approach in terms of, like, what's the minimum effective dose of strength training, and how often should you do it? So we generally recommend, for somebody who's never worked out before, a minimum of 2 days a week of full body strength training. And optimally, it'd be 3 days a week. So, for a lot of times, people find it easier to think of like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split. Here at Present Tense, a lot of our clients will do 2 days of strength training and 1 day of yoga, but 3 days a week of some sort of weight-bearing exercise. And that will be a full body movement. So you think about when lifting weights started to become more popular in the United States. The Gold's Gym heydays. A lot of the way people lifted weights came from the bodybuilding world. So you saw a lot of like a chest day, back day, a leg day. But again, going back to that strength and conditioning coach approach, our people do some sort of full body workout every time we see them, and that's training more like athletes train. So if you go to a team sport facility, generally you're not going to see a whole lot of like arm days or just chest days. You're going to see the athletes using their entire body, because when they get on the field, they're going to have to use their entire body. For our clients who aren't themselves even recreational athletes, the same is still true. Getting the kitty litter out of the trunk of your car or putting things up on a high shelf, those are full body movements. So the first big recommendation is to work full body 2 to 3 days a week of some sort of weight-bearing exercise. In the beginning, this is a question that comes up a lot. In the beginning, we're not as concerned with cardio. So, a lot of people say, we'll get people in all the time and they'll start strength training with us. And these are people who've literally never They've never touched a barbell in their life. They're not currently exercising and haven't for years. And they'll ask us, well, what else should I be doing? And it's like, in the beginning, nothing. So in the beginning, the priority is to do the strength training, and then rest well and eat well in between sessions. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to think that you have to layer a bunch of cardio on top of that. Because let me tell you, like, the first time you do a set of 20 lunges, your heart rate's going to be elevated. You're going to be getting some of that conditioning component just from the strength training alone. There's a famous strength coach, very well regarded in the industry, named Jen Sinkler. She popularized the idea of, lift weights faster for cardio, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Not always, and I've been, if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen I've been doing a lot more, cardiovascular specific training. But for the beginner, just lifting those weights, lunging, squatting. The first time I have clients do 3 sets of 10 squats, if they haven't been working out, believe me, their heart rate is elevated. So prioritize the strength training, because you're going to get both aspects, both strength and conditioning from that. The other question we get is, what about nutrition? And so for the beginner, so again, somebody who's not currently active, they're not in the fitness game, they just need to keep 2 things in mind, really, and keep it this simple. And for honestly 90% of the people I've ever trained over the 10 years of doing this, just keeping this one tip in mind will dramatically enhance the way someone's eating. And that's to eat protein at every meal, including breakfast, and eat vegetables at every meal, including breakfast. When people do that, it tends to, we talk about addition instead of subtraction. So somebody will say, like, well, I eat some fast food, or I drink soda, or I go through a drive-through, and it's like, okay, I remember I had a client a couple years ago who, sort of sheepishly came to me and said, I asked him, how his nutrition had been that week. And he was like, well, I went to Burger King a couple of times. I was like, look, I'm not going to judge that. If you go through the Burger King drive-through, have a tub of salad at home and just eat, fill half your plate with greens and eat that alongside the Burger King. What happens is that good nutrition tends to crowd out the bad, and you basically teach yourself how to eat well. So protein at every meal, vegetables at every meal, just so I don't have any vegans or vegetarians mad at me. Yes, I know that you can get your protein from non-animal sources, but you have to be mindful and intentional of that. So, you can absolutely have a vegan or vegetarian breakfast, but you have to be mindful about choosing vegetable sources that also include protein. So yeah, it's not going to happen on accident. And so that's one of the tougher things, I think, with coaching clients who have maybe some weight loss goals or some body composition goals, is to get them to ingest enough protein to be able to withstand and recover from strength training workouts. So that's all I had to say as a introduction. We have, if you're watching this online, there should be a little window where you can ask questions. I keep looking to the side here because I'm looking to see questions that pop up here. And we have one question from somebody asking, good to know about squat, hinge, lunge, push, and pull. Where does balance fit in? Very good question. So balance, for the beginner, I used to say for years, I would say that if you are strength training, that your balance automatically will improve. And there's some truth to that. There's a concept in strength and conditioning called proprioception, which is basically your body's ability to figure out where it is through space. And that is one of the benefits of strength training, is proprioception improves. But there's also research that indicates that for older clients, you do have to do specific balance training. So along with, the squat, pull, hinge, lunge, and push, we may do, what are called like filler exercises in between those kind of like meat and potatoes exercises to specifically work on balance and coordination. But generally speaking, for younger clients, the proprioception will improve with that squat, pull, push, hinge framework. And like one of the best things you can do for balance and coordination is to get on one leg. So that's your lunge or your step up. Lunging can be really difficult for somebody who's in a deconditioned state. But if a lunge is available to the client, we'll have them lunge and load that lunge with dumbbells, and that challenges sort of the balance and coordination and oblique strength, trunk strength. So that's where you get balance into the mix if you're strength training. So far, one person say, "Oh, I'm not sure how to listen." I don't know. Yeah, you have to press play if you're. Although you won't see that. Let me type that out here. All right, so if you're not able to hear, I just typed it out on the little frame there. Then you just have to press play. It looks on, if you're on a desktop, it almost looks like you're going to play a video. So just hit play on that, and then you'll be able to hear. I'll give it a few seconds here to see if there are any other questions that came through. Thanks to those of you who did tune in. This is something we may continue to do, maybe not, I don't know. We'll see sort of like what the response to it is. I know people sometimes tune in but are a little shy about asking questions. But just to review, at Present Tense, we take a team sport strength and conditioning approach to training beginners. So that means our priorities are to make people stronger, help them perform better, and that can mean different things based on somebody's activity level, while keeping them injury-free. That actually reminds me of a point I was going to make, which is that there's something in the strength and conditioning world that you may have come across called the functional movement screen. Susan is our functional movement screen coach here. And it's a diagnostic tool that some people use to basically figure out, where somebody may be deficient or if there are imbalances. And it's a nice tool. But what can happen is, for a young or inexperienced coach, it becomes almost like a crutch. So people get caught in the what I call like the functional movement purgatory, where coaches will not allow their clients to do anything difficult until they can pass some of these tests. But this is the thing is, when people are coming to personal trainers, often they're trying to get stronger, they're trying to lose weight, and they're trying to get lean. And so you have to prioritize kind of like what the client's goals are with keeping them safe. But in order to get leaner and get stronger, you have to work hard. And so having somebody do, very lightweight movements, almost like a physical therapy, like what you might see in physical therapy or in recovery, from not going to make them much stronger. It's not going to make them leaner. And what can happen is people kind of like get frustrated and give up because their body doesn't change. And so every single person who walks in our doors, our priority is to immediately begin the process of making them stronger, because strength has immediate benefits. It has immediate quality of life benefits. So if you get stronger, you will feel better. And I would never advertise this, but I'm just making up this percentage. 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, somebody walks in the door and they have little aches and pains that have sort of crept in over the years. Just getting stronger makes those aches and pains go away. So that's not a guarantee. I wouldn't put that on any sort of like promotional material. But a lot of times the problem isn't that you're injured. The problem is that you're weak and you just need to get stronger. And so that's why strength is sort of our priority. So even with an obese client, we try to make them stronger first, because if they're stronger and they feel better, they're more likely to stick with an exercise regimen than if we sort of blast them with a bunch of high intensity cardio that their joints and their central nervous system aren't quite ready for. So we try to make people stronger as a priority while keeping them injury free. The other thing I said earlier, if you're just tuning in, is that we go from general to specific. So if you've never done any sort of strength training before, just generally getting you stronger is the first priority. And then if you have specific goals, we move on to those. So if you have a specific sport or activity that you like to do, then we can tailor some of your movement to those things. But in the beginning, you just need to get stronger. You need to be able to squat. You need to be able to pull. You need to be able to push. You need to be able to do things on one leg. And so that's what we do. The other thing I said is that sort of the minimum effective dose is 2 to 3 days a week of weight-bearing exercise. And in the beginning, that's really all you need to do. As you get stronger and more fit, adding in some specific cardiovascular days in addition to those weight-bearing days is a good idea. We're just not as concerned with cardio in the beginning for somebody who is literally getting off the couch and coming into the gym for the first time, because the process of lunging or squatting is going to get somebody's heart rate up, and it's going to start working on that cardiovascular component. And then for nutrition, we always say protein at every meal, vegetables at every meal. And that's really in the beginning all you need to worry about. Just using those general guidelines will dramatically improve many people's diets. I have a question coming in here. I'm going to read. How much focus do you put on weight? I have switched from years of pure cardio to strength training. I love it, but my weight keeps climbing. I know muscle weighs more, but I am worried I am missing something. Should I change my happy weight? It's a good question. So in the beginning, I'm not really concerned. Many clients, when I first started training in a commercial gym, they had this whole process they liked us to do that was basically a sales process. And so what you were supposed to do was do like an initial assessment on a person who was considering buying personal training, and then make them feel as bad as possible about themselves so that they felt like they needed you. But now that I have my own place, I give clients the option, honestly, of whether they want to step on the scale or not. The markers that I use for clients and to track progress in the beginning, what do you see in the mirror and how do your clothes fit? If you start to see, a lot of times I'll hear from women who, they've been training with us for a little while and they're doing their hair in the morning and they look over and it's like all of a sudden they have a deltoid or a bicep, and that means that they're getting leaner. If they're seeing muscle that they've never seen before, and there's sort of fat out of the way so that they can see, then we know the training is working. Then the other obvious one is if clothes start fitting differently. Now, I will say, the more experienced the client is, the longer they've been training, then we can start to pay more attention to the scale. And so when we get to that, from the general to the specific, then the scale weight can matter. If somebody is obese, then we do need to pay some attention to the scale because we need, just sort of shedding some pounds will be easier on their body and healthier for them, generally speaking. And so we want to pay some attention to the scale weight. And nutritionally, you just need to be taking in fewer calories than you're burning, right? So, you hear it's calories in versus calories out, and it's more complex than that. But generally speaking, if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. In the beginning, I just try to focus on the strength part because that's what's going to make people immediately feel better. And then as we've been training, central nervous system is kind of acclimated to the stress and the rigor of strength training. Joints are now ready to work a little harder. Then we can start ramping up the intensity and then paying a little bit more attention to things like what's on the scale. But it's a great question. You need to, I've been talking a lot lately about the whole idea of commodifying empathy. In the fitness world, there's just a lot of sort of like soft, love your body. You know, everyone is kind of fine. And I get where that is coming from, because for many years in fitness, there's kind of a bro culture, and honestly, a misogynistic culture around women's bodies, men basically telling women how their body should look and feel. But the problem now is that's becoming commodified. And so I believe that, you know, I try to approach all of my clients with empathy. And it's a core value, but I also try to speak hard truths. And so, you know, if somebody, you know, if I have a client who's actually obese, then we need to work on helping them lose weight. And there's no way around that. We need to help them lose weight. So that means I need to coach them. I need to troubleshoot with them. I need to be there for them. But I'm not doing them any favors by sort of talking around that issue. So the issue with weight is an interesting one. It's not where I start. I always start with strength. I start with performance. We try to have more on the bar next month than we did this month. But eventually, yeah, if somebody has weight to lose, then we talk about it, and we try to troubleshoot around why it may or may not be happening. But I don't think it makes sense to start there, because what people need, I think, when they walk into a gym is to feel better. And feeling good is one of those variables that can help people stay in the fitness game. Because what we don't want is somebody, you know, joining a gym after Christmas and then, you know, being gone by February or March. We want people to begin to live a lifelong of wellness and fitness, not just kind of go in and out and diet and crash and do exercise for a little bit and then fall off. We want to teach people how to stay with it for the long haul. All right, no other questions coming through. I won't keep you here. We've been on about a half hour. That's probably the extent of my ability to ramble. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate, first of all, probably anybody who's watching this is a supporter, either by following us on social media or sharing things or liking things. And so it really means a lot that you are supportive of our approach to fitness. The other thing I just want to say is that, you know, I'm pretty easy to find. If you live in Dayton, you know, please stop by our studio here in the historic Oregon district. But if you're a follower of Present Tense Fitness in any of the social media forums, please feel free to ask questions. I mean, part of what I understand is that personal training, so literally having a coach with you for an hour, that's by definition expensive. And so part of what I like to do, and I feel like I'm compelled to do just from an ethical standpoint, is to share as much information for free as possible. And those are sort of like the people I look up to in the industry. The number of things that I've learned from people like Eric Cressy and Jen Sinkler and Nagar Flonouni, Juggernaut, Elizabeth Akinwale, you know, there's just free, they publish stuff. They put stuff out there for people to consume. And I've always just respected that approach. And so I'd like to be a part of that same universe. So feel free to ask questions. Email me at jason@PresentTenseFitness. You know, tweet at me or post a question on Instagram. I'm more than happy to help you out, because I just really appreciate you supporting what we're doing here. All right, with that, I think we will wrap it up. Thanks again for following along. And if I can find the window again, I'll close out the broadcast. Thanks. See you next time.